Welcome back, everyone. What you're looking at on the screen is a good to know sheet. It's a review sheet for the final exam in our CS22 course. Let's go through it. To start with, it says the final exam for CS22 will have two parts and will cover all material in the course from week 1 through week number 14. So the material starting in week 1 and going through week 14 is the material that will be on this final exam. The final exam will have two parts. Part 1 is going to have 68 questions. Those questions can be multiple choice, true or false, drop-down menu, or fill in the blank. Part 1 of the final exam is closed everything. That means closed book, closed notes, closed PowerPoints, closed PyCharm, and closed internet except for Canvas. Once you start taking part 1, you will have 2 hours to complete it. Now, part 1 will only be available for a certain number of days. What you need to do is go to the modules area of Canvas, go to our last week, and you'll want to click on Final Exam Part 1, and that will show you the days when Part 1 of the final exam will be available. Once the ending date passes, Part 1 of the final will not be available to anyone. Part 2 of the final exam will have 6 programming questions. Now, for all of these questions, you'll need to download a .py file. And that's where you do your code, and the instructions for what you are to do will be given to you as comments in that .py file. You may have to make some changes to a main function. You may have to make some changes to one or more other functions within that .py file. Now, some of the questions will also have you download a .txt file, which is to be used as file input. When you complete one of the programs, you will upload the .py file for that question. You will never upload the .txt file. You will only upload the .py file when you finish a question. Part 2 of the final exam is open book, open notes, open PowerPoints, and open any previous assignments like homeworks and projects. However, it's still closed internet except for Canvas. Once you start taking part 2, you will have 3 hours and 30 minutes to finish it. And just like part 1, part 2 will only be available for a certain number of days. Please look in the modules in our last week at part 2 of the final exam to see what days it will be available. Once the ending date for part 2 is passed, no one will be allowed to access part 2. As far as specific things to know, for part 1 of the final, you should review the quiz review sheets, just like you did for the quizzes. Even though part 2 of the final is open book, open note, and open assignments, you still need to be familiar with the following topics. How to open a file for reading. Also, how to use the with statement when opening a file. How to access data in a file using either a for loop or a while loop. You must know how to split a string. Now, when I say split a string, that means use the split function to create a list from elements of the string. If you're not totally familiar with this, I suggest going to the Gaddis folder in the PowerPoints folder in the Files area of Canvas and look at the PowerPoints from Chapter 8 of the Gaddis PowerPoints. That will help you. Know the following regarding double linked lists and circular linked lists. How to add and remove a node at the head or tail, and how to display the values of nodes beginning at the head or the tail. Know the following regarding binary search trees. how to build one the right way, and how to do all three types of traversals. That's in order, post order, and pre-order. Recursion is your best friend on traversals. Also know how to create a hash table using a list, not a linked list, just a list for a hash table with both separate chaining and linear probing. Know how to do both of those. Know how to create a priority queue using a list, not a linked list. And know how to create a dictionary, also known as a map, using data from a file and display that dictionary's data. That, ladies and gentlemen, is everything you need to know for this final exam. If you have any questions, please send me an email at kmuldrow@lbcc.edu.